Good morning. I realized yesterday, or last night when I got home, that the preview video I did, just looking to put this on my page here. Alright. Okay. So, the preview video I did yesterday, I had my thumb over the microphone on the camera, so y'all didn't hear anything I said. So I'm going to run this again today. It's Friday morning. We are going to have be open the office today for preview as well. The weather yesterday was a little bit challenging. I will say we heard this comment all day yesterday. It's better in person. It's better hanging on the wall. It's not what I expected it to be. And if you have a chance to come down today or maybe schedule an appointment for Monday, we really encourage you to do that because the work really does stand on its own much better. So without further ado, let me go ahead and flip this and give you a little tour of what we got going on here. I'll start right here with the still lifes, the studies he did of peaches and fruit. He did several of these that are in this auction. This is probably the most developed. It's titled Windfalls. Was actually displayed in 1996 at the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art. When the family gifted Brutality to the museum, Nelson had a showing of his works, and this is one of the pieces that was shown at that time. That's the frame that was put on there at that time, and there's a label from the Nelson on the back. And I'll point those pieces out as we go through the offerings today. Other pieces, you know, everything is on the first floor. Everything's displayed gallery style, salon style, because there was 160 pieces or so in this auction. This piece here, there's a couple little similar as far as age, as far as framing is concerned. It looks like it was framed in the 60s. Nice image of a Paris scene that he would have painted while he was in Paris studying at the Académie Julian, 1886 to 1888. He's a member of the, I'll show you books on that in just a minute. But that's a nice image of Paris, and neat piece. There's another one of the items that was displayed at the Nelson in 96, has the label on the back, beautiful painting, great frame. And let me get, those one of the examples of items that are not unstretched canvas is how we have them described. There's Mom and Dad, early portraits. He liked redheads. There are several paintings of redheads in this auction, and that's just the first one showing. So when we say unstretched canvas, this is what we mean. Let me go ahead and show you this. I think it's children on a bench. It's really just canvas that hasn't been stretched. He probably just tacked it to his work surface, painted it. He did a lot of things in plein air outside, and so it just made sense. It's easier to move it. It's easier to carry several canvas with you if they're not on stretcher. And there's a lot of those in the auction. Old Farm Gate, another redhead. The roses are a great painting. I think it's called Forgotten Roses. Rose of Sharon. Here's another painting that was displayed at the Nelson, beautifully framed, nicely conserved at the time. Blooming shrubs in shadows, crab apples. He painted elderly gentlemen extremely well. His depth of character, the details that he would show, it's hard to portray that in a picture on a website. And again, you know, this is a good sized painting. I mean, here's, you know, I can barely cover his head and face, and most you're looking at these paintings on screens that are 2 inches by 3 inches, or at most a 19-inch, you know, monitor, and you just cannot get the true depth and feel for a painting on a screen. There was a major exhibition of his work in 1961 at the Broadway Valentine Shopping Center. And you can see we have a copy of the newspaper that talks about it. Art exhibit contains prominent persons. Ironic twist in artist's life is a story about when John Douglas Patrick met Jesse James. Interesting story. We mentioned that in the description of the Jesse James pieces. And then also there is a listing, the exhibit catalog of paintings at that show. And so when we say a painting was exhibited in the 1961 Broadway Valentine exhibition, this is what we're referencing. This list here, we could match up certain paintings with what's on that list. We also have a list of items shown at the 1936 retrospective that the Art Institute, the Kansas City Art Institute, put on for him. And so when we say it was an exhibit there, that's how we know that. We, again, match them up. A few paintings here from 1903. The one on the front right and the front left are both dated 03. That was his last year in St. Louis. He went from Kansas City to St. Louis. So these paintings are early from St. Louis. I think dated 1881. That's when he went to Cahokia, Illinois. He went to St. Louis to study art because there was no art institute in Kansas City at the time. And he painted those. If you look online, there's Palette Scrapings is the newsletter that the school put out at the time. You can find references to Patrick in that, and that they actually went to Cahokia to paint plein air style. Those are from there, 1881. These are from when he came back from Paris. He lived in St. Louis for quite a while, taught there, and these paintings he did when he lived there. 1901, Girl in White. She was exhibited in the 36 retrospective and also the 61 Broadway Valentine show. We had Peggy Van Witt restore her, conserve her, and she just turned out beautifully. She's a stunning, stunning portrait, beautifully framed again. And the frames that are on this painting and Peasant Knitting are original frames. Those are the frames that Patrick had on them, you know, roughly 100 years ago. Well, in fact, all of 100 years ago, 120 years ago or so on, 115 years on the Girl in White, and about the same on Peasant. You know, he died in 1937, 80 years ago, 81 years ago, but he was painting from the 1880s. We have pictures from 140 years ago. And so it's, you know, paintings like this one right here, the study. This was exhibited in the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair, as were Golden Flicker and the Grape Study below. This has 140 years roughly of dirt and grime on it. It has not been touched ever. And so there's a lot of possibility for cleanings and restoration and for making pieces really, really pop. Really like the eagle portrait done in 02. I did not turn on the light in the hallway yet. So we will do that real quick, and hopefully they're LEDs now. So he did phenomenal charcoal work. Again, how he could get the details in a face with charcoal is just amazing. And again, the drawings, these two and those four in the walnut frames were all exhibited at the 96 retrospective. They all have the labels on the back from that exhibition. And you can see that they present beautifully. They have labels on the back. And there's more drawings in the auction as well. And again, the work he did, I mean, look at her. I mean, she's just wonderful. The details in her face and her hair. When he did drawings like this, he wasn't as concerned with her clothing. You can see that he put some details like on his collar. But generally, he was really looking to capture the essence of their character and their facial expressions and details. Nice painting of trees, white trees, I think it was dated 1900. And then a nice, one of the few, I think it's the only big painting like this, 1914. It's a painting of, you know, a mountainscape. Looks like Colorado. Kind of unusual to have that. You see, we have paintings on most wall spaces in the auction, in the office this time. He was also, this is kind of interesting, he was a professor at the Kansas City School of Orthodontia. It's pictured right there, very unusual. A neat piece right there, another picture from about the same time frame. There's a couple more pictures of him in the auction. So this is a piece that we had Peggy conserve half of. She cleaned the right side. And when you see it in person, you can really see the depth of the color. There's a lot of, you know, subtle variations of tone there. There's lilacs, there's pinks, there's the blues and whites. On the dirty side, you can't see any of that. It just looks like there's a sky behind it, but you don't know any qualities of it. So the cleaning on most of the pieces is going to really bring out the depth and the colors and the details and just how talented he was. I mean, in this painting right here, you can see that there's white and blue in the sky, but you really cannot tell the depth of that and how much other colors he used to portray those images. It's a really neat group right here. Of course, Brutality at the Nelson is his most well known. It's a seminal work. It's his most important work. And this is a stack of studies that he did. That painting is 11 foot by 12 foot. And so he's had to paint in a large scale. And this group right here kind of shows that these are, large size canvas of just parts of that painting. Let me grab this book here for just a second. He painted on anything he could get his hands on. He painted a lot on canvas. He painted on unstretched canvas, but he also painted on board a lot. These are all paintings on board, and the board could be anything from cigar box lid. He smoked cigars. That was one of his favorite things to do, to actual boards, to who knows anything else related. So when you're looking through these, that's, the board could be any one of a number of substances. This is on board, and it's actually like a cedar shingle. That's on board, and it's more of a finished artist board. A couple of great pictures there. The lions are from 1883, and they were done in St. Louis. You can see it's St. Louis, Missouri. Emperor by John Douglas Patrick. St. Louis Zoo, 1883. Kind of a neat group right there. He liked lions. There's a painting he did in Paris, a watercolor of a lion, and again, the walnut frame. Those were put on when they were exhibited at the Nelson. Here's a framed copy of the brochure from the show Brutality in 1908. The Jones Dry Goods Store, the original Jones store, was here in Kansas City. They paid $5,000 to the Fournier Gallery in Paris, France, to get Brutality back to the United States, and there's a bunch of other things they needed to get done for that. Why am I out of focus all of a sudden? All right, let me see if I can use. There's getting a little better. And it's a really interesting story as to what happened there. Back down to here. So there are other things that Patrick was exhibited in or published in. These two paintings called Threshing and A Dirty Job. And they're both in Johnson County History, 1976. This was published. And let me show you what I mean by that. This is a book they published in 1976, bicentennial piece. And you can see that there are several pictures here. That's in this auction. The picture, I think it's the Park Children. Let me see if I can find the page real quick. So you can see that those pictures are right there. Kind of just a retrospective of what Kansas life was like over history. And I want to show you real quick, if I can find it. Hopefully that's it. Yeah, right here. 103rd and Mission Road, that painting right there in this book is hanging right over here. So when we say it's published in that book, that's what we mean. There's a picture of that painting in the book. And when we say it's 103rd and Mission Road, the old farm gate, it's because that's where they referenced it to in that book. We compared, the fence line, the brush strokes here as far as the ditch type work, the tree line, looked at all that, compared it to the painting in that book. And it's definitely that. You can see in this wall here, these are all unstretched canvas. Let me walk all the way across the room. The bottom two are actually stretched on canvas, but everything on those wires hanging are unstretched canvas. Some really fun pieces. The boy waiting. The horse team, just spectacular. This painting's gotten a lot of interest. The pink trees, the full moon, early moonlight is just beautiful. And again, there's so many colors and variations in the sky. There's lavenders and pinks, and there's blues, and there's whites, and there's just really great impressionistic brush strokes all throughout. Same thing there with the winter sky. But wait, there's more. Over here, here's more on board. There are more like just scraps of board. I mean, these are really small images. Look at, again, 1903, but it's no bigger than my hand. But really, really wonderful little works. More academic studies from Paris, his time in France. The top portrait right there we had refinished, cleaned, conserved, relined by Peggy Van Witt. You can really see the colors pop out. More paintings on board with great depth of character and color. This is a fun painting here that I'd love to see conserved, cleaned up, is the self-portrait of artist at the easel with the model. Another fun lot is the large group of painting supplies, his palettes, his brushes, actual paintings, and some of the tubes are still pliable, like the paint would still be good to use, And of course the charcoal would be as well. Portrait of Grace. Basically, when you look at this, this is what Girl in White looked like before she was conserved. So the assumption is that this painting would clean up much the same way. There's going to be a lot of detail in the lace that comes through, coloration in the face, and things like that. More portraits, more paintings on board. The yucca plant painting is really fun. See, there's great pieces inside the case here as well. When I talked about, he's a member of the Société des Artistes Français Ceylon of 1886 and 87. We know that because these are his copies of the book of the list of artists, and he is referenced in both of those with the paintings that he had in exhibition at those salons. A couple of business cards for him. Pictures of Kansas. These are both 1889. Pictures of him with school children. And then this is at another school. He taught at a couple of different schools. That is him in front of a classroom. And then that's a close-up of the painting in that picture. This painting right here is of Western Lenexa on their family farm from 1920. Some more paintings on board. This would be a spectacular piece to get cleaned up. It's really hard to see, but there's a sail. You can see the top rigger right there, the upright there, moonlight on the ocean, or water. Another dark moonlit water scene there. And that brings us kind of full circle. The last thing to talk about is the Jesse James, George James pieces right here. That's Jesse on the bottom and George on the top two. He is mentioned. His name's written on the back of that. And so we know that that's George James. And obviously that's him as well. Compare up the face, the collar, the pin in the collar, the tie, this jacket are all the same in both pictures. So kind of a neat tie in there. So that is it. Let me kind of walk back to the front room here. The auction concludes on Monday evening, and we're really excited about the response so far. We've had institutional interest. We've had a lot of collector interest. I know my wife has her eye on several paintings, as I'm sure most of you watching this do as well. And I'm going to finish with this picture right here. You know, if you spend any time looking at his Wikipedia page, you can really see how important he was, the people he studied with. If you look at the who was in the salon in the 1880s, it's a who's who of the Impressionist movement and the classical time frame, classical artists at the time. So we'll look at the catalog, register to bid high and often, and good luck in the auction, and have a great weekend.